bytes, and so on, string is a data type. Now, what does this data type hold? It holds a collection of characters. And when I say characters, that could include letters, numbers, and even special characters such as space, period, dollar, @ symbol, and so on. Now, the syntax for storing a string is much like that for any other variable. You have the variable name followed by an equal to sign and then the value of your variable. But in case of strings, it's important that you always put your values within double or even single quotes. So that is string at the very basic. Let's start our demos, and I'm sure through the demos you'll have a better understanding of how to use string and where to use strings. So let's start with the most basic demo where we'll store a string within a variable and then print the value of this variable. So my variable name is stg, within which I'll store the string simplylearn. So I'll enter the string within double quotes, as you can see here, or I could also do this within single quotes like that. And then in the very next line, I'll print the value of stg. Let's run the code. And as you can see here, the value is printed. Now let me store a different value in stg. I want to store the string Tim's birthday. So I insert this within single quotes, Tim's birthday. Let me run the program. But here you see there's an error. It says syntax error, which is an invalid syntax. So if you come back to your string, you'll notice this is because our string itself has a single quote. So we tried to enclose our entire string within single quotes. But what happened is when the Python compiler encountered the single quote within the string, it assumed this to be the end of the string. So stg became equal to Tim and the rest of the word, that is the S, space and birthday, was just there for no reason, and this resulted in the syntax error. So in a case like this, what you do, if your string contains within it a single quote, enclose the string in double quotes like this. And now if you run your program, as you see, Tim's birthday is printed. Now in a similar manner, if my string has within it double quotes, then I'll store the entire string within single quotes. So let's say my string is Tim said, I am busy today. So since my string has double quotes within it, I'll store it in single quotes. And our string is printed right. Now suppose Tim said, I'm busy today, that is I apostrophe M. So now in this case, our string has both single and double quote. So here what we can do is, we can simply escape this single quote here. So for that you use the slash. And when you insert the slash, what it does is the character that just follows the slash is taken as simply a part of the string without any special meaning. So the Python compiler in this case sees this apostrophe and ignores it for any special meaning. So if I print the string now, both my double and single quotes are printed correctly. Let's try something else out. What if my string needs to be of multiple lines? So let's say my string is hey there. And on the next line, I'm typing welcome to Simplylearn. So if I try to do this in the similar manner that we did for the other strings, that is insert the entire string within double or single quotes, as you see here, that does not work. Welcome to Simplylearn is just now taken as a part of the string. Even if I try single quotes, let's try that out. Still no difference. Still our second line of the string is not considered a part of the entire string. So here what you do is you start and you begin your string with 3 quotes. Now these 3 quotes can be either 3 single or 3 double quotes. So if I'm going with single quotes, I'll have 3 single quotes here and 3 single quotes at the end. So in this manner, you can have a string with multiple lines. Let's print this out too. So we have our multiple line string. So now that we saw the various ways in which you can store strings in variables, let's try out something new. Now the first thing we look at right now is the length function. So the length function is something that you'll come across very often when you start programming. What the length function does is it returns the length of your string. So if my string is, say, simply learn, and I want to print the length of stg variable, you can just say print len of, and within the brackets, enter your variable name. Print that. So simply learn is of length 11. What that means is that it has 11 characters within it. So even if you have a space in between, even that will be counted as a character, because as I told you, a string is a collection of characters and this character could be anything. We print that out. As you see, 12 is the new length of your string. Now, just like in case of arrays, even each character of your string can be extracted separately. And again, just like in arrays, this is done through the indices. So if I want the fifth character of my string to be printed, I can just say print stg, and just as the syntax is an array, the exact same way, you have your square brackets within which you have your index number mentioned, and print that. So our fifth character in the string stg is I. Now remember, the indices in string 2 start from 0. Capital S is at the 0th index, I is at the first, M is at the second index, and so on. Now if I want to access every character of my string one by one, I can do this using a for loop, because as we learned previously, for loop is used to iterate over a sequence, and a string 2 is a sequence. It's a sequence of characters. So my counter variable is I for I in stg, and print I. So I will iterate through the string, start from capital S and go all the way up till N. And every time you're printing the value of I, that is the character that it's holding at that particular point of time. So when I print it, as you see, every character is printed in a new line. Now if you want all the characters to be printed in the same line, of course you can have your end attribute here, print that. And so the string is printed in the same line, but again it was printed one by one. That is one character at a time. Now with strings, there's a concept called slicing. So slicing is extracting a part of the string. Right now we saw how you can extract exactly one character from a string. Now what if you want to extract, say, the first 5 characters of your string stg? So this is where slicing comes in, and it's a very simple concept. All you have to do is you give your variable name, your string variable name, and within your square braces, as previously you mentioned that one index, this time you'll mention the 2 indexes and a colon in between. So I want my first 5 characters. So I'll start from 0th index and go up till 5 with a colon in between them. So let's print this. And as you see, I got my first 5 characters of the string stg. Now when you're starting from the beginning of your string, you can avoid giving this first index. What I mean is you can just put in your variable name, and instead of having 0 to 5 here, you can just ignore the 0. So Python assumes that your first index is 0 when you just skip it. When we print this, you see both the results are the same. Now let's say I want to extract all the characters from the 5th index up to the end of the string. In this case, I can just say print of stg, and within the square braces, since we want all the characters starting from the 5th index, our first index would be 5, colon, and since we want every character till the end of the string to be extracted, we can leave the second index space empty. So when you do this, the interpreter assumes that your end index is basically till the end of the string. So let's run this, and as you see here, all elements from the 5th index up till the end of the string has been extracted. Now suppose you want to extract some elements from in between the string. So in this case, it is compulsory that you must enter both your beginning and your end index. So say print stg of, And suppose I want to extract all characters from the second index up till the fourth index. So in this case, my first index would be 2 because I want to start extracting from my second index position. And my end index would be 5 and not 4. So the reason here is that the element at the end index position is always excluded. So if you put 5 here as your end index, then all the characters till the fourth index position would be extracted. And if I enter 4 here, then all the elements till the third index position would be extracted. Let me print this too. So our last output, it's the elements in the second, third and the fourth index position. Now Python has a number of inbuilt methods which makes it easy and efficient to deal with the string data type. Now there are a large number of such methods and of course we don't have the time to go through all of them. So we'll go through some of the most commonly used ones. Let's start by creating a string. So my string is welcome to Simplilearn. Now the first method we look at is to print our entire string in uppercase. So print your variable name, period, upper. So all the inbuilt methods, this is how they are called. You have your variable name, your string variable name, followed by a period, and then your method name and the parenthesis. So some of the methods require some parameters to be passed within it, and some of the methods do not. So the upper method prints a string in uppercase. Now you must remember that these methods do not change the value of the original string. They just return a new string. So stg.upper, let's print that. And our entire string is printed in uppercase. In the similar manner, we have a method to print our string in lowercase too. There you go. That's just dot lower. So here our entire string is in lowercase. Entire string is printed in uppercase. Now initially we saw that if you want to extract a particular character at certain location, you can just give the location index and the character is extracted. Now what if you want to find out the index of a particular character? In that case, we have a method called find. Find returns the index of the first occurrence of the character. So the syntax is very similar. Your variable name dot find. Now for this method, you need a parameter passed, and the parameter of course is the character whose index we want to find out. So suppose I want to find the index of the character capital S. So a character capital S is at the 11th position with the positioning or the index starting from 0 onwards. Now there's another function which is exactly similar to find, which is the index function. And the index function too does the same thing. It returns the index of the character that you pass within the brackets. So if I say S here, both of them return the index which is 11. Now these methods, they give the index of the first occurrence of this character. Since we only have one capital S, it's obvious it's giving the index of this particular character. Now if I say L, as you can see our string, it has an L here and one here too. So if I give L in these two places, let's run our program. You see the index return is for this L, that is our very first L. Now let's look at another inbuilt method for strings, which is the split function. So what the split function does is it converts your string to a list, and it does this based on a delimiter that we pass as a parameter to the method. So if I say print of stg.split, and within these brackets I'll pass the parameter. Now if you look at our string here, it's a sentence or a phrase where each word is separated by a space. So if we want each word to be a separate element of the list, then what's separating these words is the space, and that would be our delimiter here. So within quotes, I pass space. Let's run this. If you notice the last output that we got here, this is a list, and the elements of this list are the words in our string. So if we observe the return value of these methods, you'll notice that the first two return a string. These two, they return an integer or the index number. And the last one that we executed, that is a split method, that returns a list. Now often this is a very useful method. So what you do is you store the return value of this method in a variable. Say x equal to stg.splitoff. And then you can utilize this list in doing multiple functions. In this case, I have nothing to do with x, so I'm just printing it. But when you start coding, you'll find that the split function comes very handy. Now what if you want to replace a certain part of your string? For this, we have the replace method. So you have stg.replace. Now within the brackets, you have two parameters to pass. The first parameter is that part of the string that is to be replaced. So suppose I want to replace the word simplylearn in my string. So that will be my first parameter. And my second parameter is what I want to replace this particular part of the string by. So I want my string to say welcome to Python tutorial instead of welcome to simplylearn. So I'll replace simplylearn with Python tutorial. Let me print that out. So this method too will return a string. It will not change our original string. None of these methods do that. Yeah, so as you can see here, it's returned welcome to Python tutorial instead of welcome to simplylearn. Now Python has another data type called tuple. If you would have gone through our previous video on variables, we introduced tuples there. So tuples are a lot like lists except they're immutable. Now our next method is the rPartition method. So our rPartition method is a lot like the split method, but here it creates a tuple. So it returns a tuple, and this tuple always has 3 elements. Let's start writing this method and then I'll explain to you how it works. So stg.rPartition, and within the brackets, you enter that one part of the string based on which you'll create this partition. Now if I pass within my brackets the string space to space, what this will do is my tuple always has to have 3 elements. So if you look at the original string, this part here, that is the space to space, forms the middle element of my tuple. That is the second element of my tuple. Everything before this part, that is the entire welcome word, will become the first element of my tuple, and everything after this part, which is the word simplylearn, becomes the third element of my tuple. So I'll print this out and you can see how it looks like. So as you see here, rPartition returned a tuple, and split here, this returned a list. So our tuple's second element is what we passed within our brackets, and the other 2 elements are everything before and after it respectively. So these are some of the basic and commonly used inbuilt methods with strings in Python. Now let's move on to concatenating strings. So string concatenations are pretty simple with Python. Say you have 2 strings, stg1 which holds good and stg2 which holds morning. Now using these 2 strings, you want to create a third string which holds good morning. So what I can do is I'll just have a variable stg, and that will be equal to stg1 plus, now I need a space between these 2 words, so plus space, which will be inserted within quotes because at the end it's all a string, again the plus, and our next variable which is stg2, and then I'll print stg out. So you can see here stg printed out good morning, good from stg1 and morning from stg2. Now if you have no operations to be done with the concatenation of 2 strings, that is you do not need this third variable at all, you can directly put this concatenation part within our print statement like that. It's exactly the same. Now things get slightly more complicated when you have a number of strings to add. Now let's say I have 3 strings. So stg1, which holds hey, stg2, which holds there, and stg3, which holds all. Now what I want my new string to have is hey there, comma, all, followed by an exclamation. Now this could be done in the previous way. We can have the plus symbol to add the various strings, including the space, the comma, and everything inserted within quotes. But that gets a little messy when you have a number of variables to add and other extra strings to be added in between. So here is where we use the format inbuilt function for strings. So what we're going to do here, so we'll have a fourth variable stg. Now I'll just write down the format first and then I'll explain it to you. Okay, so how this works is first you have to give a format for your string. So that is inserted within double quotes. Now these braces here, the curly braces, they are called placeholders. Wherever the curly braces are placed, that is exactly where the respective string from your format function will go to. That is, our first placeholder will be replaced by the value of stg1. Our second placeholder will be replaced by the value of stg2. And our third placeholder here would be replaced by the value of stg3. And everything that is in between is printed exactly the same. So here I have inserted a space. This space will be printed exactly as it is in the same location that I have given. The comma and the space here too will be printed exactly the same way, and the exclamation would be printed the same too. So at first you give a string within which you have placeholders for these